What's going on, everybody? Aidan from Birds vs. Boys here, coming after the Eagles' 38-31 win in a chaotic fashion over the Washington Commanders, as I feel like Bill Murray and Groundhog Day, again, watching yet another roller coaster, emotional, get behind early game against the Commanders for the third straight time, it feels. There were some sloppy turnovers. There was the defense not being able to get off the field early. And at the end of the day, they do get the win, just like we felt a few weeks ago, and very similar to the Monday Night Football game that they lost to the Commanders to break their unbeaten season just a year ago. Like I said, it's Groundhog Day. It's Bill Murray explaining everything that's about to happen. Like when the bank people drop the bag, he takes the bag and walks off. I feel like I can explain to a T everything that's going to happen in an Eagles-Commanders game. I don't think the city could withstand 17 matchups against that team over the course of a year. Thankfully, it's only 2 and it's done. There's a lot of places to start today because there were a lot of different key moments in that game and a lot of big plays. But I think it's important to start here with A.J. Brown. It is not hyperbole. It is not an opinion to say he is on the greatest statistical pace in NFL history because he became the first receiver with over 125 yards in 6 straight games, passing Calvin Johnson yesterday. In a game that turned into an old-fashioned Big 12 shootout, it just came down to who had the better players and if your best players were going to make huge plays. A.J. Brown did that. He was the best player on the field. And after everything that happened yesterday, he was just better than everybody that the Commanders could throw at them. That's why they won. He has now 17 receptions, 305 yards, and 4 touchdowns against the Commanders alone this year. That is his stat line just versus the Commanders alone. He has totally dominated them. And in a game where he needed to step up again and dominate, he did just that. It is the reason why they won. Big time players make big time plays. He just flat out was better. We'll get into the schematics. We'll get into the turnovers. We'll get into the defense in the first half versus the second half. All of that's fine and good. Sometimes on an NFL field, you just need a guy who's better than everybody else. That was A.J. Brown. That was the Jalen Hurts and A.J. Brown connection yesterday. He's been fantastic, and we should just be so appreciative to have somebody like that on our football team, especially at a position where at receiver, where there were years where we really struggled. Growing up, before we had T.O., we were James Thrash, Todd Pinkston, and then recently, like a few years ago, we were like, could Travis Fulgham be a guy? Could Kevin Curtis a decade ago after a 3-touchdown game? Could he be a Pro Bowler? Appreciate A.J. Brown and how good he is. Now, in terms of the game, like I mentioned, the Groundhog Day thing, the defense in the first half, it was brutal. It was really hard to watch. Sam Howell had 2 incompletions. The defense had 0 sacks. Sam Howell is on pace to break the record for most sacks allowed this season. He's going to do it at that pace in week 14. It's not even going to take him a full season to be the quarterback sacked the most all time in NFL history. And this defense, predicated on getting pressure on the quarterback, didn't have a single sack in the first half. I don't even know how that's statistically possible. In fact, it's not. If you look at the stats, Sam Howell is throwing an interception or being sacked on 15% of his dropbacks before today. They didn't have an interception or a sack at all in the first half. He only had 2 incompletions, and one of those was actually a deep shot that he just misfired because they actually did get pressure on him. So that shouldn't even have been an incompletion in general. They totally got dominated, and it was tough to watch. Now, in the second half, they did bounce back. The Commanders were able to put some points up, but they were able to just start to get pressure, start to, coverage-wise, figure it out. They really didn't let the running game get going in the second half like the Commanders wanted to alleviate that pressure from the passing game. And once they took the lead, they did not look back. And they forced some turnovers, especially with Reed Blankenship, who struggled. He turns around, gets the big pick. You get the ball in the red zone. You get the touchdown. So it was a tale of 2 halves and really a tale of 3 quarters versus the fourth quarter. In the fourth quarter, they were able to get an interception. They were able to get a key stop late in the game. They were able to get themselves off of the field. Even the first drive of the second half, they did force a punt as well. So they did a great job. But in that first half, you're just like, what are we doing? And the perfect example, A.J. Brown makes a sick, disgusting, dominant one-handed catch in the back of the end zone. Could be the catch of the year in the NFL. You have all the momentum. You have the ball coming out of the second half. They go ahead and kick a 61-yard field goal. You let them go down the field in less than 50 seconds and no timeouts to set themselves up for that field goal. So now you're down 17-10 at half. You're down 14-3 early in that game. And it just doesn't make you feel good, right? Like, it's just like, all right, we know the stats behind this team, but then when they show up and play us, they look like a totally different team. Sam Howell turns into Patrick Mahomes out there. It's just a crazy, crazy thing. Let's keep with the ugly and just get it out of the way, because I don't want that to be my main point today for a team that's 7-1, and you're looking around what's going around the rest of the league and why it's so important that they're 7-1. So the turnovers, 2 of them in the red zone, 2 of them within the 5-yard line. It is very rare that you can turn the ball over twice within your own 5-yard line about to score and still win the game. Usually those are back-breaking, absolute daggers that cause you to lose a game. Pretty remarkable that they still scored 38 points after having 2 turnovers within the 5-yard line. The Kenny Gainwell thing, who fumbled at the 3-yard line, I think that there is a role for Kenny Gainwell. A lot of people are out on him, don't want him to play at all based on his ineffectiveness in this offense. He is a great pass catching back. We saw it in the Super Bowl. We even saw it yesterday in the second half and at the end of the half after the fumble. He's great in space. He's great at catching the football. Put him in on third downs. Put him in hurry-up situations. I think he's really good there. What he is not is a goal line back, especially on a team that has DeAndre Swift as the lead back. Boston Scott has shown effectiveness down there with his size. And in that moment, you could have taken an A.J. Brown shot who had one-on-one coverage, and he was isolated on your left side after he had just made a big catch to get you down to the 3. There are times that this offense doesn't understand flow. It doesn't understand rhythm of the game. It's like a time and place thing that they really struggle with. That was today's example. Using Kenny Gainwell as your red zone goal line back doesn't make sense. It's not understanding time and place. It's not using the right personnel. They were able to move the ball all the way down to the 3-yard line, which is super effective, and the offense looked great on that series. Why is Gainwell in there in that situation? There are small details, time and place, that they don't understand that disrupts their entire flow. You have DeAndre Swift, you could use him there. You had a shot with A.J. Brown if you wanted to pass the ball one-on-one over in the corner against a secondary that clearly could not stop him if they tried. His second touchdown was double covered. Gainwell being in there is a disaster. The brotherly shove play where they fumbled, all right, like, yeah, it's true. They convert 92% of the time. That was the 8% where they didn't. That's just being sloppy. But the Gainwell thing is avoidable. Use him in the correct role. It's not that he's a bad player. You're setting people up in bad situations. You're creating bad situations for an offense that's second in the league in yardage. Just let the flow come to you. They're trying to disrupt it with the different personnel things. It just doesn't make sense. Use common sense and we will be fine. A lot of the turnovers that we are causing are caused by a lack of common sense in this offense. It is my one complaint that we have been talking about all the way back in the New England game. There's an example. It's seemingly every time this year. Go back to the Vikings game. They were running Jalen Hurts a lot early. It didn't make sense. The game didn't call for it. It was like you're trying to set him up to have an effectiveness with his legs. Well, now his knee hurts, and it wasn't effective at the time. There's just something every week that you point to and you're like, I don't like what we just saw there. So we'll see from here. But again, they scored 38 points and turned the ball over twice in the red zone within the 5-yard line. That is almost remarkable to do. Let's get to the good stuff. We talked about Jalen Hurts. We talked about A.J. Brown, just big-time players making big-time plays in crucial moments. They just dominated yesterday. Jalen Hurts had 319 and 4 touchdowns, didn't have any picks. It was the best he'd looked in terms of throwing the ball this year. Running the ball, you probably are a little bit concerned because he looks slow. The knee is clearly bothering him. But they just dominated that game and just took over the second half when they needed to. On the other side of the ball, talking about players who make big-time plays, Hassan Reddick had the game-sealing sack on 4th and 6, and he did it for the second time this year where he had a game-sealing sack for this team. He now has 6.5 sacks for this team. We've talked about this before. Hassan Reddick had 0 sacks for the first 3 weeks. He mentioned how the cast was bothering him, and he felt like he could be himself after he got that cast off. Since that moment, he now has 6.5 sacks, and 3 of those sacks came in fourth quarters with the game on the line to seal the win for the Eagles. 3 of his 6.5. He is the closer. He is dominant in key moments. He gets to the quarterback when he needs to. And if the Phillies had a closer like Hassan Reddick, they'd probably be playing in the World Series right now. That is awesome to see from Hassan. Your best defensive player, your best edge rusher who you pay to get to the quarterback, does his job in the biggest moments. And he did it again yesterday in a game where the defense really didn't get a lot of key stops. He got the biggest, and it was fantastic to see. Another one, Reed Blankenship didn't really play well yesterday. He admitted it himself and said after the game, that interception meant a lot to me because my performance wasn't what it should be. And then you make that key play. And it was key because it set up a Julio Jones touchdown. I feel like I've seen that Julio Jones touchdown for a decade straight in this league, where it's just like, he's the basketball guy. He's just bigger. Throw it up to him in the red zone. Let your guy go make a play. He did. Takes a shot to the head, catches it anyway. Touchdown Eagles. This guy was on the street last week. Now he's making red zone catches for your team. A red zone team that has struggled adds Julio Jones, future Hall of Famer, to it. What a great move to bring him in. Low risk, high reward. Another one. Just awesome to see him in there. And the reaction after the touchdown just shows you that the respect as Julio Jones has as a player and a person. Everybody takes off from the offensive line. They're pointing. They're celebrating. Everybody loved it. I just love that reaction. In terms of vibes, not only did they score, love the vibes of that play. It was great to see. It made me really happy. The brotherly shove play at the end of the game where they get it to DeAndre Swift. I like that little wrinkle. That's something you're probably going to see down the road, and it's something that teams now have to account for. We knew it was going to happen at some point. We knew that there were going to be variations of that play, and they weren't just going to always just shove Jalen Hurts through. It's pretty effective when they do, but you know that they were going to outbalance it, and that was the perfect time to do so. DeAndre Swift probably should have just gone down at the 1 yard line and milked the clock so that the Commanders couldn't get the ball back, which they did and went down and scored. But the play itself worked. It's another variation. They tried to throw out of it before. I think we'll see that happen again. And I like that little, almost like a little wing T action to hand it to the back as he's coming behind you right there and gets himself into the end zone. So I like that. And for the back half of the season, now people have to continue to face that. Now, let's talk about this. Ugly wins, and I think I'm okay with it because they are 7-1, and the 38 points that they put up with 2 turnovers in the red zone, they were dominant when they needed to be, and they have showed signs of dominance this year. People are concerned with the ugly wins. I was actually at a haunted house last night, and one of the ghosts or characters actually broke character to complain about the Eagles game. He was very upset that the Eagles could not handle the Commanders, to the point that he no longer was a haunted house employee and he needed to vent and get off some steam about the Eagles' performance and barely beating the Commanders. And I totally get it. But I'm also just happy that they're 7-1. I'm happy with what they've been able to do. They've won in key moments. Every game feels like a roller coaster ride, or that pirate ship at the amusement park where it goes up to the top and your stomach gets butterflies and then you swing back the other way and you go all the way to the tip and then swing back the other way. So it's been a roller coaster ride, but I'm happy with where they're at. They're 7-1. And I look at it like this. In May, an hour after the schedule came out, everybody in this fan base knew what this season would look like and knew that they were going to face a gauntlet once the calendar turned to November. We are here. It is coming. We play the Cowboys next week. But through the first 8 weeks, they are 7-1, and they have taken care of business. They've won every home game on their schedule. They now go into that gauntlet, the number 1 seed in the NFC, the number 1 team in the NFC East. If they beat the Cowboys this week, they'll have a 2.5 game lead in the division going into your bye week in week 10. Anybody back in May would have signed up for this exact situation. So I am happy with where they're at. I'm excited for what's to come. They face a lot of great tests starting this week with what this podcast is all about. It is birds. It is boys. It is at Lincoln Financial Field, 4:30 prime time, Fox. I cannot wait. The Eagles did their job in the first half of the schedule before the gauntlet. 7-1, biggest rival coming to town with a chance to take a 2.5 game lead in the division and stay as the 1 seed overall in the NFC so we can have some home playoff games here in January. So that's it. Another big win for the Eagles. They came back. They get it done. A.J. Brown, don't stop doing what you're doing. I love watching him play football. Appreciate the dominance. Appreciate where the Eagles are after a 7-1 start. And let's get into this gauntlet. We know it's going to be a roller coaster. We'll obviously be back this week. We got a lot to talk about. This is our week as a show. This is what we do. We'll talk to you then.